What if the friendly bar owner in your small town was hiding a swamp full of secrets? What if those secrets had teeth and scales? This is the chilling legend of Joseph D. Ball, the Alligator Man, a roadhouse owner in 1930s Texas, rumored to have fed his darkest deeds to the hungry jaws waiting behind his tavern. Missing women, fearful whispers, and a truth so grotesque it blurred the line between rumor and nightmare. Elmendorf, Texas, a dusty rural community just outside San Antonio, a place flowing back to life after Prohibition, where neighbors greeted each other by name and afternoons drifted by with the hum of cicadas and the smell of farmland. In that laid-back quiet lived Joseph D. Ball, known simply as Joe, a war veteran, son of one of the town's founding families, and the friendly owner of the Sociable Inn, a roadhouse where locals came to unwind. Ball was polite and clean-cut. He'd listen to stories, pour a beer, joke with patrons. He was known for his unusual hobby, a concrete pond out back, home to 5 pet alligators. He charged admission during feeding time, throwing cats and dogs into the pit for entertainment. Locals called him eccentric, an oddball, sure, but harmless. He had a smile, a handshake, and he fed stray animals to gators, not people, or so they believed. But underneath the laughter and the swampy spectacle, the town began to feel whispers. Women who worked at the bar started disappearing. Barmaids who vanished into the night, never to return. Rumors grew wilder, whispers that Ball was feeding more than cats to the gators. Tales of foul-smelling barrels buried behind barns. But without proof, most dismissed it, chalking it up to small-town gossip. To Elmendorf, Joe Ball was just an eccentric man with strange pets. But behind that friendly grin, a far darker story was unfolding, one that would unravel the town's sense of security forever. Long before Joe Ball's name became a hushed warning in Elmendorf, he was just another boy growing up in the stubborn heat of South Texas. Born January 7, 1896, into a well-known family, Joe was raised among sprawling mesquite trees, wide skies, and the echo of hard work that defines small-town Texas life. His father, Frank Ball, owned a general store, the kind of place where neighbors gathered for gossip as much as for groceries. By all accounts, young Joe was quiet. Some said he was shy. Others remembered a boy who watched more than he spoke, eyes dark and calculating behind a polite grin. Even then, odd stories clung to him like barn dust. Joe liked knives. Not just pocket knives for chores, long blades he polished obsessively, tools that made neighbors uneasy when they glimpsed him testing their edge on fence posts or small animals. Rumors whispered through back porches that Joe liked to hunt, but didn't always eat what he killed. When Prohibition rolled into Texas like a prairie fire, Joe found his calling. He drifted from odd jobs to bootlegging, smuggling whiskey down back roads and dusty trails from San Antonio to Elmendorf. He was clever, never flashy enough to draw unwanted attention, but bold enough to build a tidy fortune when others went dry. With his bootlegging profits, Joe opened his own roadhouse just outside the limits of Elmendorf, the Sociable Inn. By name, it promised good company and strong drink. By reputation, it delivered far more: live music, easy gambling, and Joe's darkly fascinating centerpiece, a pit of live alligators behind the bar. At first, the gator pit was a novelty. Locals and drifters alike paid to watch Joe toss scraps to the hungry reptiles. But before long, scraps turned into stray cats, dogs, or whatever unlucky creature crossed Joe's path on a drunken night. Patrons roared with laughter, but beneath it lay a darker thrill. Was this man feeding more than meat to his cold-blooded pets? Joe's reputation grew. A war vet turned showman, part businessman, part backwoods circus master. But behind his easy smile and polite drawl, his temper simmered like a dry prairie ready to burn. He threatened staff who talked too much. A waitress once whispered to a customer that Joe had a mean streak. She didn't come back to work the next night. Elmendorf's elders, who once traded with Frank Ball at the general store, chose to see Joe as an oddball, not a threat. A few stray rumors of cruelty to animals were brushed aside. Rough men did rough things in rough towns. And what was a few missing strays when the beer stayed cold and the music played on? But in the shadows behind the Sociable Inn, secrets waited. Barrels were buried behind barns. Staff feared the sharp edge of Joe's smile, and the sharper edge of the blades he cleaned by lantern light. It wasn't just the whiskey that kept people quiet. It was Joe's way of reminding them what else he could feed to his beloved alligators when the tavern doors shut for the night. Joe Ball built his empire on liquor, charm, and fear, and the longer he poured drinks beneath the dusty Texas moon, the more Elmendorf wondered. Was it only animals that fed Joe's pets, or something far more terrible waiting to bubble to the surface? Joe Ball's Sociable Inn thrived. His barmaids and waitresses were his lifeblood. But beginning in 1937, women like Minnie Gothard vanished after their shift ended. 22-year-old Minnie disappeared without a trace. Though Joe was questioned, he was charming and cooperative. Locals gave him the benefit of the doubt. With no bodies or evidence, he was cleared. Not long after, Julia Turner walked into that same tavern and disappeared too, without packing or saying goodbye. When police noted her uncollected clothes, they revisited Joe with increased scrutiny. That day, Joe recalled lending her $500, weaving a story of a troubled woman in need, not a victim on the verge of death. Once again, suspicion evaporated under his smooth words. Then, more women, employees or girlfriends, began to go missing. Rumors ricocheted around Elmendorf. He's feeding them to the gators. They sounded like wild gossip, until pediatric disappearances multiplied. Finally, local police handed the case off to the Texas Rangers. The Rangers combed through his history and discovered a chilling pattern. Dozens of former employees had vanished. Both his second and third wives had dumped him and disappeared from public view, silent red flags hidden by rumors. But Joe refused to break. He was questioned for hours. Without bodies or murder weapons, investigators were forced to let him go, knowing they were holding only the tip of the iceberg. With no confession, yet growing outrage, the Texas Rangers and local deputies turned to witnesses. William Bill Sneed, Joe's handyman, confessed to being forced at gunpoint to feed body parts of female victims into Joe's alligator pit. A neighbor corroborated Sneed's story. He had seen Joe slice meat off a human body and feed it to gators. With each new teller, investigators felt their suspicions solidify. On September 24, 1938, detectives returned to search the Sociable Inn's property. They opened meat barrels buried behind the barn. What they found would change everything. Human remains, concealed in rusted drums, lay among old meat scraps. Ball, closing the cash drawer of his register, pulled a revolver and shot himself. Some say in the chest, others the head, but in either case, fatal. He left behind a crime scene too grotesque to ignore. That night, the mystery ended, but the horror did not. Bill Sneed, though admitting complicity, served just 2 years. The alligators were relocated to the San Antonio Zoo. Joe's third wife came forward, admitting she fled after knowing too much and refused prosecution. In the end, Joe Ball took his secrets to the grave, but the evidence remained buried in barrels, woven into the fabric of Elmendorf's darkest legend. When the dust settled over Elmendorf, Texas, the truth left more questions than answers. Officially, only a few victims could be named, young barmaids like Minnie Gothard and Julia Turner, but whispers claimed the real number was far higher. Families waited for bodies that never turned up. Mothers kept porch lights burning for daughters who would never come home. And the town itself, once trusting and close, learned that sometimes monsters live right next door, serving drinks behind the bar. Today, Joe Ball's story remains more than local folklore. It's a dark cautionary tale, a reminder that evil doesn't always look like a stranger in the dark. Sometimes it smiles, shakes your hand, and invites you in for a drink, while its secrets hiss in the swamp behind the tavern. In Joe Ball's world, monsters didn't just lurk in swamps. They ran the tavern down the street. If this story gripped you, if America's darkest true crime legends send shivers down your spine, then like this video, share it with a fellow crime buff, comment your theories below, and don't forget to subscribe for more true crime that proves real life is stranger and more chilling than any fiction.